Good morning. I welcome everybody to the October 20th, 2022 public hearing of the City Prescott Board of Adjustments. The board members present are, please state your name as I call off the roll call. I'm Jim Lamerson, the chair. Tony Teeters, vice chair, is excused and will not be here today. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thomas Davis,
Here.
Mary Frederickson,
Here.
Mark Hockness.
Here.
Okay, and you're on. Okay, good. Larry Meads,
Here.
James Myers.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. This is an open public hearing and is being recorded by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representatives of the public media and the public local cable and/or radio stations, and may also be broadcast. The number of board members present are 6. Am I correct? Thank you. And it will require 4 votes for a majority. As some individuals may be attending via Zoom, all parties wishing to be heard, including board members, are required to state their name prior to speaking in the order to ensure proper recordation. Members of the public are required to state their name and address for the record so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them at a later date if necessary. Please keep your phone or PC microphone on mute unless you are speaking to minimize the background noise. I thank you very much. Now, what I would like to do is start the meeting off with a Pledge of Allegiance. Larry, would you mind leading us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag
the flag of the United States
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Larry. Okay, moving right along. Today we're here to talk about CUP, conditional use permit.
First, we have to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay, and before we do that, we will approve the minutes from the last meeting. And board members, did you guys read the minutes?
Did?
Did you have any questions or differences in what was presented?
No.
Not seeing any, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I'll move we approve the minutes for the last meeting.
And may I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, it signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've done that, and then I would like to get into the meat of the topic.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Tammy DeWitt, Community Planner with the City of Prescott. The request today is a conditional use permit for the Circle K expansion on Willow Creek Road. So it's a conditional use permit to allow for the expansion of the service station, the gas station, in the business general zoning district. Conditional uses require special consideration regarding the effect on the surrounding properties and the use in relation to the objectives of the ordinance. A conditional use permit may be granted only when the Board of Adjustment finds the proposal meets the general criteria as detailed in the Land Development Code. So the property is located along Willow Creek Road. This is a commercial corridor within the City of Prescott in the general plan. It is on Business General. In the Business General Zoning District, we do require a conditional use permit for service stations. Since this was an expansion of existing, it requires the conditional use permit. Here's the area imagery. Like I said, this is Willow Creek Road. This is a commercial corridor designated within the general plan in the Land Development Code. Here's the existing Circle K gas station. The current gas station consists of 3 gas pumps, and the expansion will include 7 pumps and 5 electric charging stations. So here's the site plan, and I'll bring up a PDF to kind of zoom in a little bit more here. So they're going to expand the existing store. They're in the process of combining the 2 lots. And then we're going to have a larger fuel stick canopy station, which is pretty typical of what we're seeing for the new Circle Ks that are being built. So this is going to be pretty typical to the one that you see by the hospital, so the size-wise. And then on over here, on this side of the property, they're going to have the charging stations for electric vehicles. And then on this side of the property, next door is the Culver's fast food restaurant. So here's the Culver's restaurant that has been built over the last year. And there's another view. So this is a vacant property that the store will be, Circle K will be expanding onto. And here's looking towards the existing store, the existing property that it'll be expanding on. Here's another picture. There is a screening wall in the back and vegetation that is required when we're adjacent to residential. That will have to be remained there, and as well as the screening is also required. Mostly in a commercial corridor, there's usually additional requirements. Then here's the existing gas station that's going to be expanded. So in looking at a conditional use permit, there's different criteria that we look at. We looked at the effect of the environment, compatible with surrounding area, external impacts minimized, infrastructure impacts minimized, consistent with general planning code, parcel size, and site plan. This has been reviewed by our reviewing agencies, and there's no concerns or issues from any of our reviewing agencies. There's adequate access. There would be 3 access points, 2 off Willow Creek and 1 where the existing gas station has. And it meets all our setbacks and other criteria in a commercial corridor. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit for a gas station at the proposed location with the details proposed and summarized in this report. And here's a suggested motion, either to approve with conditions, or deny the conditional use permit. And I'm free to answer any questions, and I do have the applicant on Zoom if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Tammy. Board members, do you have any questions?
This is Mary Frederickson. Tammy, I didn't see in the packet particularly that the notice was provided directly to the neighbors.
We went out 300 feet, so for anything going from the Board of Adjustment, we are required to notify the neighbors within 300 feet, and we do that for all applications. And the property was posted, and it was noticed in the paper.
And the notice went out to the neighbors in that 300 zone?
That's required per state statutes, yes.
Okay, great. And I saw in the pictures there was a culvert or some kind of drainage ditch near that property line between the current culverts and the empty lot that will soon not be, I suspect.
And that's right here, so there is plenty buffer between, for that drainage, so there's going to be no impact to it. And it was reviewed by our drainage district, and there's no concerns.
Do you know if there's going to be an expansion of any underground gasoline storage tanks?
Yes, they're going to be, well, I don't know if there's going to be an expansion, but here's the fuel tanks underneath. So I don't know if those are the ones that are there, it looks like it, or they may have to expand for the more pumps that they're putting in, but that's all reviewed by our engineers.
So no issue with the drainage, water drainage going through that culvert?
So at this time, there's no engineering permits, so that'll all be reviewed with permitting.
Okay.
Right now, we're just looking at the site plan and the site plan at this time.
Okay, great. And I guess my only other question was the tree line along the back of the property line. Is that on Culver's? Oh, not Culver's, sorry.
It's on this property, yes.
Or the property owner's lots?
It's on this side of the fence, so it's on the subject property.
And that'll be retained as part of the landscaping required for?
It's going to be recommended, so, because there are already existing trees and it meets the criteria, so, let me see. Jill, do you have any other comments in regards to landscaping along the back?
Yeah, because we have to use, good morning, this is Jill Kaiser with Land Development Consultants, the applicant in speaking on behalf of Circle K. In the rear of the store, there's quite a bit of drainage that will have to be, area that will have to be used. So as always, any trees that are required to be tagged to remain will be, even if they have to be removed and put back, depending on the construction activities. If they are not able to remain, then of course they won't be able to remain. But we do have to meet the setback, as you mentioned, Tammy, for landscape.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any other questions?
I wouldn't mind also just recapping on something Tammy said about the fuel tanks. We will be taking out the existing fuel tanks. We always do that. And then the new ones you see there along Willow Creek, those would be new tanks going in.
I remember back when I was chairman of the board of the Chamber of Commerce, on the piece of property we had there with removal of fuel tanks, also had to do cleansing of the soil because of the, you had to remediate for EPA type stuff. So
Correct.
is that being taken into consideration with regards to the expansion?
Yes, so the phase 1 environmental will be reviewed through Circle K's environmental department as customary, and should remediation be required, that will happen at that time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Does any of the other board members have any more questions or observations?
Jim Myers, this question. Do you know when the existing was put in?
No, I did not look at that.
Mr. Chairman, this is Larry Meads. In looking at the site, I see that there's quite a bit of difference in elevation between the new lot and the existing lot site. And I don't know how that's going to get resolved. I'm sure that'll get resolved through the engineering plan. But it makes me wonder about that screen wall in the back, because obviously that elevation is going to change, and it's probably going to rework that drainage portion quite a bit as well. And I just wonder if that screen wall, which is why this is a conditional use permit application, if that will remain adequate. It doesn't appear to me to be adequate anymore.
If they remove the wall in the back, they'll have to replace it with a screening wall that meets the criteria, and landscaping is required around there, so that will be reviewed at permitting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. So a lot of this is, right now, we're just seeing if we agree with the use being altered, but the standard of the alteration hasn't been thoroughly vetted yet. Is that what I'm?
So all we're reviewing right now is the site plan. When they start submitting for their permits, all that will be reviewed by our reviewing agencies for their engineering permit and their building permits.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I had one more question. I don't think it's germane to the conditional use permit, actually, but I just wondered, I was a bit confused about the electric vehicle charging stations that are indicated. I couldn't tell if they're actually going to be put in or if they're future with some unknown date.
Well, right now it says future stalls because that's where the expansion area is. So that they're going to put them on this side. They're going to be developed, and then at some point they'll be put in.
Thank you.
Permits, you heard?
So that
Yes.
got your
Thank you.
question answered?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board members?
Not at this time, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to open up some discussion with the public. Thank you for showing up at the board. And when you go to the mic, if you would state your name and your address and make your comments, would appreciate it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and the board. My name is Violeta Ayalon, and I live right in the area of the public that received the notice about the renovations and the expansion. And I don't have to tell you what happens when an expansion of this nature takes place in your neighborhood. We suffered tremendously from the building of culverts. It sounded like there was a bombing and explosions for most of the day and evening, including weekends. It was horrific, if I can tell you, as a citizen who lived right in the backyard of Culver's. Now, we certainly want the city to make money on expansion because the money comes to the city from the taxes of the property. However, we cannot stop the city from making money. We can request and ask the builder to put a soundproof barrier along the property where they plan to expand, so that the children, the citizens, and whoever lives in the backyard of Culver's and Circle K will not suffer as we did when the Culver's was put in. So I am really, really asking that you support the citizens of the area and are going to request from the builder to do this, to keep us safe and sound. There are a lot of members who are on Zoom today from the area that couldn't come, and we have 2 other citizens that live right behind the Circle K. So I'm really hoping that you understand how we feel, and if something was going to be built that includes that much excavation and that much renovation and that much sound, that you're going to support us and make the property owner do that for us to keep us safe. Thank you for your consideration.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Janice Toland. I live on Amherst, which is right behind the new facility. And I just wanted to I'm sorry, I have a problem with talking. With what Violetta said, it was exactly right. It was just crazy, 7 a.m. or earlier, wham, 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 and it went all day long. I don't know, how we made it through. But I'm wondering, when they talk about the trees and they're talking about a wall, which would be very effective if it was would cut down on the noise that went into our homes. But that everything that she spoke about seems to be it's not been confirmed. They're just deciding what they want to do, and talking about the trees, and it does make it easier to not hear the noise of the travelers in front of us. But it sounded as though that was sort of iffy, that they would do it if they could. And that's a bad thing. I'm hoping that we can do something to handle the noise, maybe a wall of something with noise blocking. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
So as a quick question, Chair, for them, are they looking for just a sound barrier during construction or permanently?
Excuse me?
Are you looking for a sound wall during construction or permanently? Okay.
Permanently, yes.
Okay. So depending on how the ground's going to be leveled, the houses in the back here are a higher elevation than the property, the commercial corridor. So we'll work with the applicant to see what we can do to try to mitigate that. But right now, it depends what they're going to do when they start getting into their engineering in regards to vegetation and the wall back there. So.
Okay, I appreciate what you're saying. Is the applicant here or a representative of the applicant?
Yes, they're on Zoom. She's been
Okay.
talking.
I have a question with regards to that. Is it feasible within this conditional use permit that we have a condition for approval that mitigation of the noise that would be created by altering the property be taken into consideration prior to construction?
Yes, we'll work with the applicant to try to figure out what can be built along that meets code requirements to try to mitigate the noise of construction. It's very difficult this is a commercial property, so anybody could build anything on it with code. The only reason this is before you is because it's a gas station. So we will work with the applicant to try to see how we can try to mitigate any noise impacts along back there.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Tammy.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Larry?
It's Larry Meads. Noticed in the paperwork that this will be a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week facility. And with that in mind, I just want to emphasize that I agree that some screening is appropriate, and I don't know how detailed we can be about that, but I think it's quite appropriate in this case. And I think the existing wall has some deficiencies that, at the very least, need to be repaired, but really, I don't think that wall's going to be adequate for the project.
And we'll review their plans to make sure it meets their code requirements for commercial screening and for being in a commercial corridor, which requires additional screening.
I'm sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Larry.
This is, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in front of you.
Go ahead.
Mary Frederickson, just to clarify what that term means, screening wall, by the code requirements, is that screening visually, or does that have a screening for sound element to it?
It's visual.
Just visual? Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that was part of my question. Is it feasible to ask the applicant to do something to remediate the noise or the potential noise? And I think it's important to understand, I think the Circle K operates now during certain hours already, and they're going to expand their hours. Is that what you were saying?
No, they're not expanding their hours. Circle Ks are usually open 24/7.
Okay,
That's
so that's what
consistent.
I wanted to hear on the record.
Yes,
So the hours are going to remain the same.
correct.
So, all they're doing is expanding the size of the building.
Correct.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question
Yes.
for staff. What further review does this project go through? What
So
further
this-
review steps are?
So after this, if this is approved, they're also going to go through a site plan review with the Planning and Zoning Commission because a water service agreement is required to go through a public hearing process. So with the new water policy, they'll also have to go through a site plan review, which we've already done with that application. So this has been vetted through 2 different processes, the conditional use permit and with the site plan review. And then once all those are completed, then they will apply for their engineering and their building permits.
So there is no further public hearing type of review?
The site plan is a public hearing through with the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council.
Okay.
So after this process,
Yeah.
so this is so they have a replat, they have a water service application that's been reviewed, they have the conditional use permit that's been reviewed, and they also have a site plan review with the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council.
Okay.
So there's a whole nother
So
public hearing
there's
process.
further opportunity for the neighbors to give input to those bodies?
Yeah, the site plan's just looking at the site plan, just to make sure it's a feasible project, and that's already been done. This is the body that adds additional conditions to mitigate any impacts to the neighbors.
Okay.
Tammy, it's Mary Frederickson. To that end, is this the appropriate point in that process as opposed to some of the later planning and zoning or the council to address the neighbors' concerns as far as a sound barrier? Would that be at this level,
Yes.
if we would want to put that in?
Yes, because at the site plan review, they're only looking at it because of the water service application, and all they're looking at is the site plan itself. They're not looking at impacts to the neighbors.
So that's on us?
Yes.
As opposed to a later review by planning and zoning?
Correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
Can I speak again, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Since it's been such a terror and such a horrific experience with culverts that we learned after the fact, I'm hoping that you all will vote for placing of the soundproof barrier that will stay there forever, because the expansion obviously will bring more traffic. The charging station will bring additional traffic. So their expansion is going to double their current capacity. I don't know how anyone in a sound mind can think that they can just keep building and building and building, impacting the entire neighborhood, and have the ability to do it without any consideration for the neighborhood. Yes, we want great neighborhood, we want services, but we want the services to be placed in a safe manner. And certainly without a full soundproof barrier behind the gas station, we will be slaughtered again. So please consider us and our families and those who live behind those two buildings, that there will be no construction approval until the soundproof barrier is put in place. Thank you again.
Tammy, again, this is Mary Frederickson. I guess I have a question for the developer's representative that's on Zoom. Of course, there's no such thing, frankly, in my view, of soundproofing such an open space. But sound mitigation, I would think, is a possibility. And I'm just wondering if we could hear from the developer as to whether or not that's even something feasible, that there could be a sound mitigation barrier behind the Circle K expansion between them and the neighborhood behind them. I don't even know if that is technologically or possible.
Right. Tammy, do you want me to take that, or do you want to speak first?
You go ahead.
From the development code perspective that developers have to follow, first of all, this is a commercial property, and so all commercial code requirements, both we have to adhere to, as well as we get to develop to. The rear setback, the purpose of a rear setback or side setback, front setback, et cetera, the purpose of those are for spacing sound appropriateness between the adjacent properties, whether it be commercial or residential. Hence, when you're up against commercial next to residential, you typically have a greater setback requirement, as well as additional soundproofing, if you will, requirements of a wall, and the height of that wall and the type of that wall based on individual municipality code. And that is what we will follow. To do something more extensive, if the site just doesn't allow for it, nor is it feasible. We will definitely have landscaping as required and the wall as required. And those would be the soundproofing remedies, if you will, that are required and that are feasible. And just to say, I mean, again, this is commercial property, so this is what comes with this piece of property, if you will. There just isn't enough room on the site, nor is it feasible to do. I couldn't even tell you what else there could be done to make, as Councilwoman mentioned, or sorry, Commissioner mentioned, soundproofing, of course, we know isn't possible. Even on freeways, et cetera, soundproofing consists of barriers many, many feet wide and walls. And that's typically what you'll see is earth mounds and things like that. Obviously, there's no room behind the building for 5 to 10 feet wide earth mounding in addition to a wall. So we will definitely meet within code and we could even expand slightly, for example, go to 6 foot instead of 5 foot, but that's, what's feasible to be done.
And also, if you look at the site plan here, I kind of zoomed in the back here. So there is that drainage back here, so there's going to be no traffic behind the store. So the store itself kind of acts as a sound barrier because everything up here is up front. Most of the parking spaces is up front up here. There's a few on the side here. And then the electrical chargings will be up here, farther away from the rear of the property here. So if you see right here, that's 26 feet right there for a barrier. This is where the trash is. Then we have the parking along here, which is about 44 feet away from the property line. So the building itself will somewhat act as a sound barrier for it because all the access and everything is off the front of the store. And then the store itself back here will act as a sound barrier for all the uses up in the front of the property.
Thank you. Any other?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Jim Myers. Just to clarify, I feel like you folks are worried more about the construction noise than once it's over, that noise. You live with the Circle K now, that's not a problem, correct?
Right.
So it's really during construction that you have a problem, right?
Right, but then there is the expansion, so there will be twice as much traffic and twice as much noise as before. In addition, if you look at the Culvers, they must have had the same building
We'll
code
have you,
criteria.
we'll have you come up to the microphone if you want to speak more.
Sure, Violeta Ayalon. So behind the experience that we have had from Culvers, they have had the same code as a commercial building. And we suffered horrifically for over 6 months during their construction. And now there is more traffic and more people coming, so there is impact not as big as during the construction, yes, but still there is an impact. Some people drive like crazy and you can hear the squeak noise of the tires. People are not considerate that there is a neighborhood where people live behind. They just go do what they want. And again, this is not right. The builder should be required to get a consultant that is experienced in soundproofing and should be able to construct a soundproofing barrier, maybe not fully soundproof, but somehow sound safe, that is safe to the ear based on physicians' requirements, if you know what I mean, so we all don't go deaf after the construction, because it has an impact on people's hearing, and a lot of construction people don't provide their workers with the soundproof devices either, so they make them in a hazardous situation in front of their work and workload. So again, I know that they are required to meet the law based on the construction, but this is not the law we are talking about. We are talking about impact on citizens, impact on families, impact on our lives. So indeed, if they are not aware of any possibilities that they can construct it, they need to seek professional advice. And yes, it may cost thousands of dollars, so they'll make $2 million less than what they would have if they didn't call a consultant to tell them how to build the noise prevention and how to keep the citizens safe. We want to have construction of services too, definitely. We want charging stations. Some people don't have it in their house. So it will be helpful, but do it safely. Don't do it because of money. Do it for safety of the public, for safety of the citizen, and for our sound mind and healthy ears. So thank you again, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you.
So an additional question, Jim Myers here. Is there something we could do ahead of time when the permitting takes place, that the wall would be one of the first elements of construction, so it would help during construction also?
So a screening wall is for visual impact. Because of the change in elevation, because the residences are up higher than the commercial properties, sound carries up. There's nothing we could do in regards to the sound during construction. So
Just get a consultant that will take care of it. We are not experts in soundproofing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this is Larry Meads. Mr. Witt, I want to be sensitive to what we're hearing today, although the nature of construction is it's noisy, and we can't eliminate that noise, and I'm trying to think about what we might do that could have some mitigation towards this, and perhaps the hours of construction, they could start at 8 rather than 7. I don't know how feasible that would be for the owner, but that's something for them to consider. As far as specific noise mitigation with some barrier, unless we have some scientific or engineering input, I don't know how we can say it, except it's going to be generic and not have much of an application here. So I'm not sure how far we can go, what we can really do to address that.
I understand what you're saying on that, Larry. One of the things that concerns me with various different things, especially with regards to what they're allowed to do by law. So then at what level are we proposing a taking if indeed we require something that by law they're not required to do at this point in time? So I want to walk through this sort of gingerly.
Yes, sir. My personal experience with many decades in construction is that it's a transitory process. It may seem like hell while it's going on, but that memory fades pretty quick when things are done.
So going back to what Jim down here was talking about, is there something that's feasible that we can discuss with the property owner is what they could do to mitigate during construction the noise as much as possible?
Well, and the hours of construction is what came to mind for me.
So, anyway, yes, do you want to speak again, Violet?
Yes. So as I suggested, the law is the law. Nobody will get upset or get bent out of shape if you provide safety above the law. They'll be grateful. So yes, think above the law. The law does not cover everything. So we have to interpret the law as far as how do you minimize the impact on the environment and the neighborhood and the people who live behind it and will have to endure it for the next 6 months or a year. I don't know how long it will take them. So as I said, we here are not experts on sound mitigation or on sound barriers or whatever. We need to get the engineers who have the expertise, who have done previous sound mitigation constructions, and bring them in with the owner of the property and say what is possible to do. And please be kind enough when that meeting happens that you invite the citizens so we can hear the specialists and the consultants' suggestions and recommendations that need to be in place before this is approved to go ahead. Because if you approve it today to go ahead with it, then we done with. There is no more anything. So if you can put it on hold till there is a consultant hired from specialists in the field and knowledgeable in mitigation of noise so that we can feel safe and sound. Please consider it for this hearing. Thank you.
Okay. Tammy, as part of the special use permit conditions, we can include certain things, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things that I think I'm hearing my fellow commissioners discuss is sound mitigation during and after construction. So is there a way to construct a condition of approval pending getting mitigation of the noise?
I'm thinking what they can do, because construction is loud. If they're constructing a house, if they were constructing just the store and not the gas station here, you wouldn't be seeing it. And we'd have the noise. There's construction of commercial, and this is a commercial corridor, so we can't preclude it being developed as commercial. The idea is either additional buffering along that property boundary. But I mean, like I said, that because the residences are up higher elevation from their ground level, that it's going to be very difficult unless they built a 20-foot wall. And that's just something we would not require any other commercial business to do. So we need to be kind of careful about what we do require, that it's still something that is feasible. But in regards to sound mitigation during construction, that's almost impossible.
Well, I kind of like what Larry was saying, and that was with times of construction, not doing it in the middle of the night and what have you type thing.
So our construction hours from 6 to 8 per the building code, for city code, is from 6 to 8. So if you want to make it where, and we would try to enforce it, is to possibly have the construction hours maybe can't start till 8. That's something we can try to enforce.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question here for you and Ms. DeWitt. I suppose, I don't want to get beyond the scope of this board. I'm wondering if it might be prudent to table this to our next meeting and see if the owner or owner's representative can come back with some of their ideas about addressing these concerns.
Yeah, this is Tom Davis. I totally agree with that. That's something I would suggest. If we can, a 1-month continuance, from the site plan, I can't tell, and I wish I paid more attention when I drove by because I couldn't see this wall. Where the wall is, the wall appears to be, the 5-foot wall appears to be on the upslope of the property.
It's back in here.
It's helpful to
You
drive
can't really
behind
see it that
the
well,
building.
but my point is that based on the site plan and the topography, I can't see what can be done. I really can't. I think it would be prudent to have maybe more detail on exactly what that edge condition is or is going to be, what is proposed to be, and see from the applicant if they can address this issue. And then we can probably more prudently put a condition on the property that may be feasible for both parties.
Like I said, the store being 10 feet off that rear property line, which is allowed per commercial, for business general zoning, it's going to be noisy, and there's nothing we can do about noise.
No doubt about it, yeah.
So, but in regards to the visual along the barrier there for screening, for visual screening, that's something we can address with landscaping and a solid wall. But in regards to noise mitigation, there's nothing you can do when it's commercial development, because they're going to demo the existing building and such. That's going to be noisy. And then with the commercial construction, like I said, there's really nothing we can do in regards to noise for that.
Nothing we can do, but perhaps the owner's got some ideas about that.
Mr. Chairman, what is the hesitancy of asking the owner of the property to get consultants on noise mitigation? That has to be #1 priority. They cannot move on with the building and expansion unless there is, because none of us are experts on noise mitigation. We all think there is a way, or some of us think there is no way because we haven't seen it, but I am sure there are ways. If there is a will, there is a way. So let's have the will first, and then there'll be a way. Thank you for consideration.
Okay, Tammy. Going down, starting with Mary, I would like to hear from my commissioners, including the one that's on the computer.
Zoom.
Zoom. Is your preference to postpone a decision on this CUP until we hear from the proposer as to what ideas they have on trying to mitigate noise for the neighborhood?
This is Mary Frederickson. Yes, I would agree with a delay on our decision here and hear from the developer or Circle K's representative as far as what is possible. I don't think construction noise is possible to mitigate. It is loud, but it's temporary. But as far as noise mitigation, sound mitigation for the ongoing business venture, is there elements that could be undertaken?
Thank you.
Jim Myers here. Yes, I agree we should probably postpone it for one meeting, just to see if there are some ideas. I'm not sure we're going to get any positive feedback, but at least we try.
Okay.
And I totally agree with, it's Tom Davis, I totally agree with the previous speakers, and I also want to reiterate that there simply is not enough detail to address this issue unless we put onerous conditions on the applicant that may not be reasonable. So I totally agree with the continuance.
Okay, I agree with your comments. Larry?
Yes, I agree with what I'm hearing about a postponement to a certain date next month, although I think it's the construction will be significantly noisier than the actual operation of this facility. I think there are things we've heard about noise screening when it's in operation that will be quite effective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Tammy.
Mr. Chair,
Mark Hoekness.
Yes, Mark.
and I concur with the balance of my fellow board members that gathering more information is appropriate, and a continuance for 1 month is recommended.
Thank you for your comments. So Tammy, I think you heard fairly well unanimous up here. We would like to continue this discussion to a later date. But, you know, I would suggest don't want to get it around too much around Christmas.
We'll defer it to the next board meeting next month.
Okay, thank you.
Is a motion necessary?
Yes.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we table this request to our next scheduled meeting in November.
I second.
That's, excuse me, CUP 22-001.
So you have a motion and a second?
I second, James Myers, I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor of delaying this until next month, say by aye.
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 Now, I just want to be clear, are we simply just going to delay till next month or put a condition in, like, we need more details on the
We
southern
haven't-
barrier?
We're deferring the application to allow the applicant to provide more information on how they may try to mitigate the noise.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We haven't come up with a constructed condition to include yet, so, okay. And it was unanimous. So with that, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you. Or is there anything else that the board would like to discuss? We're adjourned.